curious, can you give us kind of an overview based on the forecast, that you've provided, what's going on with winter now and what might we expect going into the new year?
Yeah, so a feature I've become quite interested in is the jet stream across really the North Pacific. Over the next couple of weeks, that is going to become quite active. And what that's going to do is really increase the temperatures all across British Columbia and Alberta through the month of December. Keep in mind, it'll still be above normal in places like Lake Louise, Jasper. Your highs will be kind of around that freezing mark, but generally through the heart of December, they're much colder than that. So this Pacific air is going to dominate throughout the remainder of December. We also have a high confidence for a return to the storm track, which may be the perfect Christmas present for those ski resorts in and around the coastal mountain ranges. We'll watch for that storm track to really pick up the days approaching Christmas. And long as we don't tap into any sort of Pineapple Express events like we saw earlier in December, those snow levels should generally be below 2,000 meters. And that's where kind of the sweet spot, that's where we want them to get the accumulating snow in and around the south coast and portions of Vancouver Island. So that's kind of how we've got December transpiring, and a lot of that warmth is due to El Nino. This is the first time we're dealing with a strong El Nino event, and El Nino being those warm sea surface temperatures west of South America, west of Peru, and that tends to give us above normal temperatures across British Columbia. That's what we saw back in 2014, 2015, but that doesn't necessarily mean the ski season is heading toward a catastrophe. Of course, above seasonal in the middle of winter is still plenty cold to get snow. And of course, artificial snowmaking has become quite critical as well.
You brought in a couple of terms there that I think some of us understand a little bit, but I'd love it if maybe I could ask you to demystify a couple of the weather terms that we hear getting thrown around a bit and maybe aren't, everybody doesn't have the same understanding of it. So you mentioned the Pineapple Express, El Nino. I don't know if you brought in the polar vortex there. I'd have to listen back, but there's a couple of these things that we hear about, and it's like, well, what is it, and how does it affect things in Western Canada? And of course, we're all a little curious about that. So could you tell us a little more?
Yeah, for sure. So the polar vortex right now is the coldest air on the planet. So the first half of December, it's been hanging out in Siberia, where we've noticed temperatures falling close to minus 60. Now, previous years, we've had lobes of the polar vortex move across British Columbia and Alberta. And those temperatures drop into the minus 30s and minus 40s at times. So that's on the other side of the pole. You could think of that polar vortex, just the densest, coldest air. And it's generally not at the surface. You have to actually go up into the stratosphere. That's where this feature tends to hang out. And if you get a strong Pacific jet stream, that tends to consolidate the polar vortex closer to the North Pole. And right now it's on the other side of the planet over towards Siberia. Now, in terms of El Nino, we look at the water temperatures in and around South America. There's this teleconnection where we look at the ocean temperatures interacting and changing the configuration in the atmosphere. So we get that general pattern with that warm water in and around the equatorial Pacific. That has a feedback effect that causes the jet stream to ridge a little bit more than what is typically found across Alaska and the Yukon. So that allows that warmer than normal temperature signal to really pan out during an El Nino. And we have to keep an eye on precipitation. Generally this year, we're forecasting precipitation amounts to be near normal for the South Coast, but the further north you go, you're generally going to dry out a little bit. It's just the nature of the beast in terms of that current jet stream configuration brought on by El Nino.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack in these terms, and obviously, you're doing the forecasting day to day. There's a lot to figure out as you go. So I know that we can't necessarily, promise a particular amount of snow into the new year, but we talked December. I'm wondering, you alluded to some precipitation and warm weather. What sorts of things should skiers and snowboarders prepare for in the new year? Like, just in general.
Well, I think we could talk about the pros in a pattern like this. Getting to ski resorts with less frequent storms will be less cumbersome and a lot more blue sky days. So the skiing during adverse weather will generally be a little bit lower this year, as we're not dealing with storm after storm. But January and February will come with challenges at times, especially with that Pineapple Express term I alluded to. So that's essentially just an atmospheric river. There's atmospheric rivers swirling the globe 24 hours a day, but there's a special designation given to a Pineapple Express. That's where we get this moisture transported directly from the Hawaiian Islands. The one concern with that would be sky-high freezing levels, which we saw back in early December, where freezing levels spiked to 3,000 meters. And of course, that's not great news for ski hills. So hopefully we can keep those Pineapple Expresses at bay in the new year and get much more of a smooth curve when it comes to our freezing level. Less volatility is really key to that pattern if we want to continue to build the snowpack right through January and February and even into spring.
Yeah, you know, and I hear a lot of people, I mean, with the above average temperatures that we've had the last couple of months saying, oh, I'd be happy if this continued. But I think for us skiers and snowboarders, the message you're giving us, and we'll all be fingers crossed that say the temperatures drop a little bit, you know, that maybe they stay below that freezing mark you mentioned, especially at altitude, because that's what we do notice, right? If you get a freezing level at 1,400 meters, that can be great for a place like Marmot Basin. Whereas if you get a freezing level at, like you said, 2,000, 3,000 meters, then we've got a challenge, right? It might come down as rain.
Yeah, and some of those ski resorts, Big White, Silver Star, those resorts are generally pretty protected from those sky-high freezing levels that occur in and around North Vancouver and up the sea to sky. So hopefully that goes our way. And I think this winter, honestly, we just need a bit of luck. We just need a little bit of a pattern shift into January, February. You know, the correlation is there with El Nino, but you go back some El Ninos, 2015, 2016, and we actually scraped together some normal snowfall amounts when you look at, places like Whistler, a couple ski resorts through the interior. So it's certainly not impossible. We could actually get a normal snowpack in a few ski resorts across British Columbia this winter season.
Excellent. Well, I mean, we'll all be watching for that. And I just want to remind anybody who's listening in, or just catching up, we're talking with Tyler Hamilton at the Weather Network, and he's given us some insights into what we might be able to expect coming into the new year. And we'll be putting out a story to complement this as well. And you can watch for that in our newsletter. So be sure you're signed up to those as we go, and stay tuned, because of course weather changes.